It didn't send out a new stream. At least I don't see one.
I got a notification.
Glad you did, because I didn't get one.
Yeah, it just went over the same one that we was on. It's online.
Okay, I just gotta find it.
So we're live on the air.
All right. All right, we back, y'all. Let me see if I can find the where I left off at. Give me a second. Okay, we back. Had a break in internet connection and shut everything down throughout the whole office. So glad it came back. So now where was I? Let's see. Oh yeah, talk about Dragon Canoe. So Dragon Canoe's forces advanced up the Great Indian Warpath and had a small skirmish with a body of militia numbering 20 who quickly withdrew. Pursuing them and intending to take Fort Lee at Long Island on the Holston, his forces advanced toward the island. However, on July 20th, it encountered a larger force of militia 6 miles from their target, about the size of his own, but desperate. In a stronger position than a small group before, during the Battle of Island Flats, which followed, Dragon Canoe was wounded in his hip by a musket ball, and his brother Little Owl incredibly survived after being hit 11 times. His forces then withdrew, raiding isolated cabins on the way and returning to the Overhill area with plunder and scalps after raiding further north into southwestern Virginia. You get hit 11 times and you still alive? That's a lot.
The 50 Cent of Indians. What's going on here?
But, man,
Yeah, you got 50 beat by 3 shots. What, 2? Yeah, 2 shots.
I can't.
You got original 50. What was it, 75 cent?
You know what? He more like $1.50. How about that? On July 21st, Abraham of Chiloé led his party in attempting to capture Fort Castle on the Watauga, but his attack was driven off with heavy casualties. Instead of withdrawing, however, he put the garrison under siege, a tactic which had worked well the previous decade with Fort Loudon. After 2 weeks, though, he and his warriors gave that up. Savanouk's party raided from the outskirts of Carter's Valley far into the Clinch River Valley in Virginia, but those targets contained only small settlements and isolated farmsteads, so he did no real military damage. Colonial response. The affected colonies of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia conferred and decided that swift and massive retaliation was the only way to preserve peace on the frontier. Colonials gathered militia who retaliated against the Cherokee. North Carolina sent Griffith Rutherford with 2,400 militia to score the Oconaluftee and Tuckasegee River or Tuckasegee River valleys and the headwaters of the Little Tennessee and Hiwassee. South Carolina sent 1,800 men to Savannah, and Georgia sent 2,200, to attack Cherokee settlements along the Chattahoochee and the Tougaloo rivers. Not long after leaving Fort McGahee on July 23rd, Rutherford's militia, accompanied by a large contingent of Catawba warriors, encountered an ambush by the Cherokee at the Battle of Cooby Gap in what is now western North Carolina. After defeating the attackers, he proceeded to a designated rendezvous with the South Carolina militia. On August 1st, Cameron and the Cherokee ambushed Andrew Williamson and his South Carolina militia force near the lower Cherokee town of Insunigu, known to whites as Seneca, in a battle of 12 Mile Creek. The South Carolina militia retreated and later joined up with the militia force of Andrew Pickens. The next day, August 2nd, the joint militia force bivouacked, and Pickens led a party of 25 to forage for food and firewood in what is known as the ring fight. 200 Cherokees surrounded and attacked the party, which withdrew into a ring and were able to hold their attackers at bay until reinforcements arrived. Pickens and his militia defeated the Cherokee on the Tougaloo River in the Battle of Tougaloo, which they then burned on August 10th. On August 12th, Williamson and Pickens defeated the Cherokee at the Battle of Tamasi. With this, they had completed their destruction of the lower towns, Kiowa, Estato, Seneca, and the rest. Afterwards, they proceeded north to meet up with the Northern Carolina militia of Griffith Rutherford. Rutherford's militia traversed Swannanoa Gap in the Blue Ridge on September 1st and reached the outskirts of the Out Valley and middle towns of September 14th, at which they started burning towns and crops. Williamson's militia were attacked at the Battle of Black Hole near Franklin, North Carolina on September 19th, but were able to fend off the Cherokee and met up with Rutherford. In all, Williamson, Pickens, and Rutherford destroyed more than 50 towns, burned the houses and food stores, destroyed orchards, slaughtered livestock, and killed hundreds of Cherokee. They sold captives into slavery, and these were often transported to the Caribbean. In the meantime, the Continental Army sent Colonel William Christian to the lower Little Tennessee Valley with a battalion of Continentals, 500 Virginia militia, 300 North Carolina militia, and 300 Rangers. Upon reaching the Little Tennessee in late October, Christian's Virginia force fought those towns from whence the militia attackers had sprung: Great Island, Sitco, Tukwa, Dakwayi, Tuskegee, Chilhowee, and Great Tellico. Not only deserted but burned to the ground by their own former inhabitants, along with all the food and stores that could not be carried away. Migration to Chickamauga. Akona Tosta supported making peace with the colonists. Dragon Canoe called for the women, children, and old to be sent below the Hiwassee and for the warriors to burn the towns, then ambushed the Virginians at the French Board River. Akona Stota attacked Kula and the older and the older chiefs decided against that plan. Akona Stata sent word to the approaching colonial army, offering to exchange Dragon Canoe and Cameron if the Overhill towns were spared. Whoa. Hmm, that was interesting. Dragon Canoe spoke to the council at the overhead towns, denouncing the older leaders as rogues and Virginians for their willingness to cede land for an ephemeral safety. He concluded, "As for me, I have my young warriors about me. We will have our lands." Afterward, he and other militant leaders, included Ostenaco, gathered like-minded Cherokee from the Overhill Valley and hill towns and migrated to what is now Chattanooga, Tennessee area, where the great Indian warpath crossed the Chickamauga River, South Chickamauga Creek. Since Dragon Canoe made that town his seat of operations, frontier Americans called his faction of the Chickamaugas. Okay. He said, well, these are so-called runaway slaves. Sounds like it. Other Cherokee refugees turned up in Pensacola and wintered there. John McDonald already had a traditional post crossing the Chickamauga River. This provided a link to Henry Stewart, brother of John. In the West Florida capital of Pensacola, Cameron, the British deputy Indian superintendent, accompanied Dragon Canoe to Chickamauga. Nearly all the whites legally residing among the Cherokee were part of the related exodus. You talking about some where's the Django doing all of this, really? So here's the interesting part. I said nearly all the whites legally residing among the Cherokee were part of the related exodus. So they went with Dragon Canoe. In March 1777, Cameron sent the refugees to Chickamauga along with a sizable amount of goods. The colonists learned of the material and planned to intercept it. When Cameron informed him of the danger, Missisquoi, paramount chief of the Upper Muskogee, sent a force of 350 warriors to guard them as well as assist in rebuilding and waging war. Treaties of 1777. Primarily, negotiations between the Overhill towns in Virginia were held at Fort Patrick Henry in April 1777. Nathaniel Gist, later father of Sequoyah, led the talks with Virginia, while Atakulakula, Oconostota, and Savanuka headed the delegation of Cherokee. The Cherokee signed the Treaty of DeWitt's Corner with Georgia and South Carolina on May 20th, and the Treaty of Fort Henry with Virginia and North Carolina on July 20th. They promised to stop warring with those colonies, promising in return to protect them from attack. In the Treaty of DeWitt's Corner, the lower towns ceded all of their lands in modern South Carolina, except for a small strip in what is now Oconee County. One provision of the Treaty of Fort Henry required that James Robinson and a small garrison be quartered at Chota on the Little Tennessee. He had been appointed superintendent of Indian Affairs for North Carolina, while Joseph Martin had been appointed superintendent of Indian Affairs of Virginia. Targets of Cherokee. From their new bases, the Cherokee conducted raids against settlers on the Holston, Doe, Watauga, and Nolichucky rivers, on the Cumberland and Red rivers, and those in the isolated frontier stations in between. The Cherokee ambushed parties traveling on the Tennessee River and on local sections of the many ancient trails that served as highways, such as the Great Indian Warpath, Mobile to northeast Canada, and Sitka and St. Augustine Trail. St. Augustine to the French Salt Lick at Nashville, the Cumberland Trail from the Upper Creek Path to the Great Lakes, and the Nickajack Trail, Nickajack to Augusta. Later, the Cherokees stalked the Natchez Trace and roads improved by the uninvited settlers, such as the Kentucky, Cumberland, and Walton Roads. Occasionally, the Cherokee attacked targets in Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Kentucky, and the Ohio country. In contempt of the peace proceedings at Fort Henry in April 1777, Dragon Canoe led a war party that killed a settler named Frederick Calvert and stole 15 horses from James Robertson, then moved to Carter's Valley, killing the grandparents of Davy Crockett, along with several children near modern Rogersville, and marauding across the valley. In all, the raiders took 12 scalps. In summer 1777, Deputy Superintendents Cameron and Tate led a large contingent of Cherokee and Muskogee warriors against the backcountry settlements of the Carolinas and Georgia. The Cherokee established a camp at the confluence of the Tennessee and Ohio rivers, near present-day Paducah, Kentucky, to prevent infiltration into the Mississippi in the spring of 1778. So it looks like instead of straight up battling, they were more or less conducting raids against either residences or colonies. Is that what I'm understanding, James?
Uh-oh, I was steady going in the paint, and I was on mute. Yes, sir. That is correct. And you're gonna see it more and more that these wars, or some of us, pitted against the rest of us, because there was not enough Europeans, not enough bodies over here at that time to do what they were doing.
That's exactly what it looks like. So we were targeting our own people and also hitting up the colonists where they were at, which is the reason why a lot of them were moving to forts or either set up makeshift forts.
Yep, we could do a whole month series on just all the forts that were set up over here.
So now now it's reading about the Revolutionary War phase, Southern Strategy, 1778 to 1783. In late 1778, British strategy shifted south. As their attention went, so did their efforts. Their armies and their suppliers, including those slated for the Southern Indians. The Southern theater had the added advantage of being home to more loyalists in the North. With all these new advantages, the Cherokee were able to greatly renew their territorial defense. Both the Cherokee and the Upper Creek signed on for active participation. British victory in the North. On December 17, 1778, Henry Hamilton captured Fort Vincennes and used it as a base to plan a spring offensive against George Rogers Clark, whose forces had recently seized control of much of the Illinois country. His plans were to assemble 500 warriors from various Indian nations, including the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Shawnee, and others, from a campaign to expel Clark's forces back east, then drive through Kentucky, clearing American settlements. McDonald's headquarters at Chickamauga was to be the staging ground and the commissary for the Cherokee and the Muskogee. Clark captured Fort Vincennes and Hamilton along with it. On February 25, 1779, after the siege of Fort Vincennes, the Chickamauga Cherokee turned their sights to the northeast. So battles in the Deep South. British captured Savannah on December 29, 1778, with help of Dragon Canoe, John McDonald, and the Cherokee, along with McGilvery's Upper Muskogee force and McIntosh's band of Hittichi warriors. Just over a month later, January 31st, 1779, they captured Augusta, Georgia, as well, though they quickly had to retreat. With these victories, the remaining neutral towns of the lower Muskogee threw in their lot with the British side. Thomas Brown of the King's Carolina Rangers was assigned to the Atlantic District to work with the Cherokee, Muskogee, and the Seminole. Charleston was captured on May 12, 1780, after a siege that began March 29th. Although, with the British took prisoners some 3,000 patriots, including South Carolina military or militia leader Andrew Williamson. Upon giving his parole that he would not again take up arms, Williamson became a double agent for the Patriots, and according to testimony after the war by Patriot General Nathaniel Greene. In early 1779, Robinson and John Donaldson traveled overland along the Kentucky Road and founded Fort Nashboro on the Cumberland River. It was the first of many such settlements in the Cumberland area, which subsequently became the focus of attacks by all the tribes in the surrounding region. Leaving a small group there, both returned east in autumn 1779. Robertson and a group of fellow Watahoogans left the east down to Kentucky Road, headed for Fort Nashboro. They arrived on Christmas Day, 1779, without incident. Donaldson journeyed down the Tennessee River with a party that included his family, intended to go across to the mouth of Cumberland, then upriver to Fort Nashboro. They departed the East Tennessee settlements on February 27, 1780. Eventually, the group did reach its destination, but only after being ambushed several times. In the first encounter near Tuskegee Island on March 7th, the Cherokee warriors under Bloody Fellow attacked a boat in its rear. Its passengers had come down with smallpox. They took as captive the one survivor who was later ransomed by American colonists. The victory proved to be a Pyrrhic one for the Cherokee. A smallpox epidemic spread among its people, killing several hundred in the vicinity, several miles downriver, beginning with obstruction known as the Suck or the Kettle. The party was fired upon throughout their passage through Tennessee River Gorge. Oh my gosh. One person died and several were wounded. At Muscle Shoals, the Donaldson party was attacked by Muskogee and Chickasaw up into Hardin County, Tennessee. The Donaldson party reached its destination on April 24th, 1780. The group included John's daughter Rachel, the future wife of future U.S. Representative Senator and President Andrew Jackson, who fought a duel in her honor in 1806. Shortly after his party arrived at Fort Nashboro, Donaldson, along with Robertson and others, formed the Cumberland Complex. The Overmountain Theater. Robinson heard warning from Chota that Dragon Canoe's warriors were going to attack his hosting area. In addition, he had received intelligence that McDonald's Place was the staging area for the Northern Campaign that Hamilton had been planning to conduct, and that a stockpile of supplies equivalent to that of 100 pack horses was stored there. Small parties of Cherokee began repeated small raids on the Holston frontier shortly thereafter. In the summer of 1780, Thomas Brown planned to have a joint conference between the Cherokee and Muskogee to plan ways to coordinate their attacks, but those plans were forestalled when Georgians under Elijah Clark made a concerted effort to retake Augusta in September, where he had his headquarters. His Kings Carolina Rangers and 50 Muskogee warriors formed the entire garrison against Clark's 700 fighters. The arrival of a sizable war party from the Chickamauga and Overhill towns and a force from Fort 96 in South Carolina prevented the capture of both the Cherokee and Brown's Rangers, chased Elijah Clark's army into the arms of John Seaver, wreaking havoc on rebellious settlements along the way. This set the stage for the Battle of Kings Mountain, October 7, 1780, in which Loyalist militia, American volunteers under Patrick Ferguson, moved south trying to encircle Clark. They were defeated by a force of 900 frontiersmen under Seaver and William Campbell, who are referred to as the Overmountain Men. Why does it seem like the North is getting why does it seem like the colonists are getting their butts kicked? Brown, aware that nearly 1,000 men were away from the American settlements with the militias, urged Dragon Canoe and other Cherokee leaders to strike while they had the opportunity. Under the influence of Savannah-Nuka, the Overhill towns gave their full support of the new offensive. Both Brown and the Cherokee had been expecting a quick victory, by Patrick Ferguson, and were stunned that he suffered such a resounding defeat so soon. But their planned assault on the settlement was in motion. Learning of the new invasion from Nancy Ward, her second documented betrayal of Dragon Canoe, Virginia Governor Thomas Jefferson sent an expedition of 700 Virginians and North Carolinas against the Cherokee in December 1780. Under the command of Seaver, the expedition routed the Cherokee war party at the Battle of Boyd's Creek on December 16th. After the battle, Seaver's army was joined by forces under Arthur Campbell and Joseph Martin. The combined forces marched against the Overhill's town on the Little Tennessee, and the Hiwassee burning 17 of them, including Chota, Chihoe, the original Seco, Talico, Great Hiwassee, and Chistowe, finishing up on January 1st, 1781. Afterwards, the Overhill leaders withdrew from further active conflict for a time, though warriors from the middle and valley towns continued to harass colonists on the frontier. Not long after returning home from his destruction of the Overhill towns, Seaver had received word that the warriors from the middle towns were bent on revenge. At the beginning of March, Seaver raised a force for a campaign against the middle and out towns east of the mountains, beginning at Tuskegee and ending at Cowie. They burned 15 towns, killed 29 Cherokee, and took 9 prisoners. While Dragon Canoe and his warriors turned their attention to the Cumberland, the Shawnee began raiding settlements in upper East Tennessee and southwest Virginia, the latter having become Washington County. In particular, they targeted those along the Clinch and Hudson Rivers and Powell's Valley. These Shawnee came down from their homes on the Ohio River by way of the Warriors Path through the Cumberland Gap. Their attacks continued along with occasional forays by McGillivray's Upper Muskogee, even after sporadic raids by the Cherokee renewed, until they began to focus all attentions on the Northwest Indian War. In midsummer 1781, a party of Cherokee came west over the mountain and began raiding the new settlements of the French Broad River. Seaver raised a force of 150 and attacked their camp in Indian Creek. On July 26, 1781, the Overhill town signed the Second Treaty of Long Island on the Holston, this time directly with the Overmountain settlements. In response to incursions by new settlers beyond this limit of the treaties, warriors from Chickamauga towns began harassing the Holston frontier in the spring and summer of 1782. In September, an expedition under Seaver once again destroyed many of the towns in the Chickamauga vicinity, and those Cherokee of the former lower towns in North Georgia from Buffalo Town at the modern Ringgold, south of Ustanali, near modern Calhoun, Georgia, including what he called Vanstown, as well as Elijah and Coosawhattie. Most of the towns were deserted because, having advance warning of the impending attack, Dragon Canoe and his fellow leaders chose relocation westward. Meanwhile, Seaver's army, guided by John Watts, somehow never managed to cross paths with any parties of Cherokee. So I'm going to go ahead and read the attacks of the Chickamauga, then I'm going to stop there. At the beginning of April 1779, a group of 300 Cherokee and 50 Loyalist Rangers under Walter Scott left the Chickamauga towns headed for the marauding campaign against the frontier settlements in Georgia and South Carolina. Hearing of their departure, Joseph Martin, Indian agent for Americans at Chota, sent word to Governor Patrick Henry of their absence. The state governments of Virginia and North Carolina made a joint decision to send an expedition against the Chickamauga towns, who were thought to be responsible for the raids. Most of those warriors, however, were in South Carolina with Cameron and Dragon Canoe. 1,000 over-mountain men under Evan Shelby, father of Isaac Shelby, first governor of the state of Kentucky, and a regiment of Continentals under John Montgomery, disembarked on April 10th, boating down the Tennessee in a fleet of dugout canoes. They arrived at the Chickamauga towns 10 days later. For the next 2 weeks, they destroyed the 11 towns in the immediate area and most of the food supply, along with McDonald's, home store, and commissary. Because the warriors were on a campaign in Georgia and South Carolina, there was no resistance and only 4 deaths among the inhabitants. Whatever was not destroyed was confiscated and sold at what became known as Sale Creek. Upon hearing of the devastation of the towns and the loss of all their stores, Dragon Canoe, McDonald, and their men, including the Rangers, returned to Chickamauga and its vicinity. The Shawnees sent envoys to Chickamauga to find out if the destruction had caused Dragon Canoe's people to lose the will to fight, along with sizable detachments of warriors to assist them. In response to their inquiries, Dragon Canoe held up the war belts he had accepted when a delegation visited Chota in 1776 and said, "We are not yet conquered." To cement the alliance, the Cherokee responded to the Shawnee gesture by sending nearly 100 warriors north. The towns of Chickamauga area were rebuilt. Dragon Canoe responded to Shelby's expedition with punitive raids to the frontiers of both North Carolina and Virginia. Grand Rising Smoking Big 06. In midsummer 1779, Cameron arrived at Chickamauga with a company of Loyalists, refugees, and convinced the Cherokee to join them on their march to South Carolina. 300 took up arms and headed out to maraud the back countries of Georgia and South Carolina. Later in October, Andrew Williamson, Andrew Williamson's South Carolina militia responded by attacking several towns on the eastern frontier of Cherokee territory and burning their food stores. So again, it's basically Indians raiding either Indians' storehouses and property, or attacks on colonies and or forts. So there was no flat out war. It was just basically raids. This is crazy. So James, help us understand this mess when it comes to this Revolutionary War that was basically an Indian war.
Yeah, the Cherokee began fighting for the British. And what got all of the tribes that were east of the Appalachian Mountains involved was 2 things. Again, the Boston Tea Party and the assassination of Crispus Attucks. Because quiet as it's kept, they keep talking about Crispus Attucks being quote unquote this slave and a mulatto and all of this. But Crispus Attucks goes back to King Philip's War. And this was an attempt by the colonists to get rid of Britain, because you think Britain's involved. Britain and France were fighting. France and Spain had their conflicts, and Spain and the British were all fighting. It was just this triangle that was going on. And so now you have the push, what you read before, with the Northern Creek versus the Southern Creek, and that's nothing but the Yamasee. They were all part of the Yamasee, and when they left, the Creek sided with the Northern Creek sided with the British. The Southern Creek stayed loyal, and that's why you hear about this the Southern attack. So you had Katabasu to the south, you had the Yamasee, you had the Seminole, which at this time was beginning to be pushed down into Florida. You had the Chata, you had the Alabama, and all those, really all your Muskogee language tribes, which later became your Confederate states. So, like I say, this is all just one big continuation, one big war. There were times of recess and go right back at it. So the Revolutionary War still takes you back to the 7 Years' War. It just kept going on, and that Revolutionary War leads you to War 1812. Leads you to all these other conflicts, and leads you to the so-called Civil War again, which was us against us, because that's when we really started losing a lot of land without any treaties. Then keep going on, and that leads dealing with the Buffalo Soldiers and getting into the Spanish American War. Then that leads into World War One. Then that leads into World War Two. It's just a continuation, and we are just pawns in the game. But it was really those what was known as Cherokee, with all these different tribes, versus the tribes to the south and the tribes on the eastern Atlantic coast. That's what the Revolutionary War was all about.
And there you have it, folks. The
So why
Rev-
haven't we still gotten any African ships yet? None?
None. I haven't seen any. I haven't heard any.
I'm gonna put that out there. I'm not saying that no African slaves or servants or kidnapped did not come over here. I'm saying not to the level of these millions that they keep referring to. How could that be when the three major players, again, Britain, and Britain is still your Dutch, your German, your Spanish, and your French, were all at war with each other. So how's all of this going on, and all these slaves being brought over here at what ports? Because you think at the time they keep land swapping. So how did these ship captains know what was going on? Where are they taking these slaves? Who's buying these so-called slaves? And where are they getting all these ships from when these ships are being used to bring war supplies over and troops over, and then taking crops back over into Europe? So where were all these slave ships? I say, anybody put it out there, I want to know. I want to see these 200 people stored in the lower deck, 300 people, 500 people stacked on top of each other. I'm still waiting on those. I haven't seen them yet. I yield the mic.
Makes a lot of sense. And if you think about it, which goes back to what you was talking about, when it seems like everything kicked off when Great Britain made that declaration to keep the colonists from passing over to the Appalachians, basically keeping them all on the East Coast.
Yep, and they start running out of room because you think everyone's coming over, uh, as they said, leaving persecution. Again, these were still criminals that were coming over here from Europe. And you had the tribes that were over there, and they knew that, hey, if we're east of the Appalachian Mountains, we're not going west of the Appalachian Mountains, because those are different peoples, those are different tribes. And so why am I going to leave my land to go over to someone else's land and start a conflict? And now you have all of these Europeans coming over, influx of Europeans coming over, and the British are saying, hey, you can't go in this area because we've already made an agreement with the Cherokee, and the Cherokee is saying you guys can't come over here. So now you have a conflict. It's no matter where you go. When you go to big cities today, everyone's talking about, oh, black on black crime, black on black crime. When you put a whole lot of people in close proximity, conflicts are going to happen. You're going to get into fights. You're going to get into wars. That's just human nature. I yield the mic.
No sellout. You got anything you want to add from what we read today? What we had out for Bones?
That's a little loud where I am.
All right. Bones, you able to take us out? So everybody can get to enjoy their days before the weekend starts. All right. No worries.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
No, I was asking Bones had anything he wanted to say before we headed out, and let everybody get back to what they was doing so they can enjoy their weekend and the first day of summer.
Oh yeah, since this is the longest day of this year, take that time out and do some more investigating. Keep digging. You're gonna, like I said, more. That's all I can say is more and more and more. You're gonna find out that it was us battling us because Europeans didn't have the bodies like that, and all these other people that kept coming over here and coming over there. And as you were reading earlier, I wanted to go back even dealing with Mesoamerica, where you have Belize, Ecuador, Panama, Guatemala, all over in that region. You'll start to see as these Europeans started saying, well, you take this land and you take that land, you'll see the influx of certain people. Because like the Garifino, they keep saying, oh, they have African ties. But the Garifino are like, no, we were already in the island. That's why the Belize is called a Caribbean. And you're like, they're not part of the Caribbean. They're on, in the Yucatan area. They're in the right next door to Guatemala. But as those islands were turned over to the British, those from the Caribbean came to Belize to work. They didn't come over there as slaves. They came over there to work. They were getting paid. Again, getting back to that silver. But I know I'm rambling on, and I apologize. But I'm off the mic. Keep searching, because you'll find out more and more it was us against us. We were the proxies. Now you're the mic.
Well, definitely appreciate you providing the information and insight and making all this make sense. I mean, it's definitely making a lot of sense to me. It's tying a lot of things into place so we can get a better understanding of this history now, which is our story. Like you said, it's us against us. There wasn't enough of them over here to be fighting not only each other, but keeping us as slaves or Africans as slaves and dealing with Indians. Yeah, that don't make sense. But
And remember the segment. I know I said I was going to yield the mic.
no, you could. No, go ahead. You got it.
Remember the segment where it leads back into what Alexander Hamilton was trying to do and why he was using the Catawba Suponi, because when you read about, now the southern attack, the southern front, you all were holding down what we call the Carolinas against those that were claiming to be or so-called British. And that is why, again, Alexander Hamilton wanted to use you all as the Navy. You were the naval fleet. So he was saying everything going out west of the Mississippi was going to be New Louisiana. And that was going to be a separate country. because he didn't want to have any dealings with what was going on with these so-called Cherokee. And you'll notice the Cherokee were divided into three different groups, three different bands of Cherokee. And then you start to find out that some of these Cherokee were actually what you would call the Iroquois and the Algonquian speaking people languages. And then you had the southeast, or the what we call the northern Creek, that area there. You'll find out that they were Muskogee, Tutelo, all these different bands that were coming together. And then you had those that were going out west. But you'll start to see how some of these people that are claiming to be all of these Otas, Dakota, and why they have B blood types. So you need to start checking. If you're saying that you Blackfoot, then you need to start checking your blood type. And that's why the Blackfoots are saying you're not us. Go back to those Acadians and those Vikings. Remember, this all the mixture of people, all these Melungeons living out in this area, which is going to spill over into the last frontier, the last battle of Texas. With that, I yield the mic.
And on that note, Bones, you able to take us out? If not, I can take us out. It's all good. He's probably busy doing work. So it's always great to kick it with the relatives. We're glad that you joined us today. I'm glad you stuck with us while we had our internet difficulties and came back. So appreciate you all. Hope you have a great weekend and enjoy the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year. You know, go outside and enjoy some of this weather if you're able to. And also get some of this research done, because as you see, there's a lot of information that's being told from the Indian side versus what we were taught and what we thought. So with that being said, everyone have a great day, a better weekend, and we look forward to kicking it with y'all on Monday. Y'all take care. Peace.
Peace, y'all.